The Last of Us Season 1 just finished airing, the show that is, of course, based on the beloved game of the same name. I watched all of Season 1 and I'd like to share my thoughts on it. Before I get started, I do want to just say that this will be a spoiler-free review. I will not be doing any sort of in-depth discussions on any of the specific plot points that happen in the show. Of course, there will be some of you watching that have played the game, so you probably already know what some of those things I might be referring to are, but I'm just going to kind of refer to vague things that happen instead of like specific events in the show. Just to provide some context as to the lens that I was viewing the show in, I never played the game myself, although back in 2013 when the game did first come out, there was a guy who I was watching on YouTube at the time, and he did do a full playthrough, which I did watch. But with that being, just about 10 years ago, there wasn't really a whole lot that I remembered for the game. Honestly, the only things I remembered specifically were the beginning of the game, so kind of like the prologue, and then I also remembered how the game ended. Those are the only things I remembered specifically. All the other stuff in the middle was new to me as I was watching the show. So if I had to classify myself into one of the two groups of people watching the show, the people who have played the game and the people who have not played the game, I would have put myself in the position of the group of the people who have not played the game, because most of this stuff I did not remember, and I considered myself to have been experiencing it for the first time as I was watching the show. First, I'd like to talk about the acting. There was quite a bit of skepticism when Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey were announced as the leads of the show. You know, Joel in the game is a 50 or 60-year-old white guy, and Pedro Pascal is significantly younger and is Chilean, so there was some doubt as to whether he could really, embody that character. And for Bella Ramsey, she was somewhat of an unknown at the time. Really, the only thing most people would have known her from was her a couple of brief appearances on Game of Thrones, which were awesome. Like, she was awesome in those roles. But that was really all that she had done at the time. So when they were announced, there was a bit of skepticism as to how they would work in those roles. Fast forward about 8 weeks, and Pedro Pascal is pretty much everyone's daddy at this point. And both him and Bella Ramsey have already been confirmed to be in season 2 of the show, which I think speaks volumes to kind of how people feel about their performances. Like, their chemistry is amazing. I think that they brought kind of their own take on the characters, but they both kind of embodied still like the main essence of the characters from the game. They were just amazing, and I'm really glad to see the recognition that they're getting. I think it's really well deserved. And I actually think, just to keep on the casting, I think they got all of the casting pretty spot on in this show, from casting characters that are pretty much usually, or from actors that are pretty typecast, like I almost said Ron Swanson, from Nick Offerman to getting cast into a more serious role. All of the supporting cast, I felt like everyone was cast perfectly. It didn't feel like anyone was like out of place. So just the acting overall in the show was a big positive for me. From a technical aspect, I thought that the production design and the visual effects and the look of the show was awesome. There was never a moment where I felt like something looked like it was computer generated. There were never any moments where I was like, that's obviously green screen. And from my understanding, for the most part, they filmed, out in nature, like in real locations, apart from a couple places, but nothing in the show felt fake. It all felt real and authentic and lived in, which goes a long way in my enjoyment of content. One thing that really struck me about the show as well is the emphasis that it places on character development and the human being characters. Obviously, the game features and the show features, infected zombie-like creatures that are what bring a lot of the action to both the game and to the show. But what I think a lot of people don't remember about The Last of Us, it's a story about human beings. It's about human beings' relationships with one another. Of course, this is about a very specific relationship between, two people. But it's also about just how people's behavior changes in certain circumstances, or how people's true nature come to light in difficult circumstances. And the show really makes that a focus. Like, there are a couple episodes where there's not a whole lot of action. There's a couple episodes where there's no infected to be seen anywhere. There are 2 episodes that I can recall that pretty much don't progress the plot at all. They're, for the most part, flashback sequences that serve to provide context and kind of expand the world that we're viewing through the lens of human beings interacting with each other. And I think a lot of people may complain about that because, in a video game form, you have to have something to keep the player engaged. And in the game, that's in the form of combat. Of course, you can be a little bit more stealthy in the game as well, but you keep the player engaged in the game by frequent combat to, it makes the game fun. That's the interactive portion. But the focus of the game still and of the show, like I was saying, is on human beings and is on people. And so I think there will be some people that wanted to have seen a little bit more action, maybe a little bit more infected, which, yeah, I would have liked to see that as well. But I think the show really honed in on what the point of the story is and really made that a focus, as opposed to where in the game you have to have those action sequences because it's a game, that's what you do. But in the medium of television, that's not always necessary. And along those lines, I really think that this is an adaptation that definitely took advantage of the medium of television. They definitely made some decisions to add relatively new storylines or expand on storylines where doing that in the game just wouldn't have made sense. Like the whole episode with Bill and Frank, that wouldn't really work as a level in a game. The same instance in episode 2, we see a little bit more of the beginning of the bacteria of the pandemic, which again, as a level, that probably wouldn't have really worked in the game, but that is what you can do in TV. You can expand on certain things and provide a little bit more context, which again, I think is really good. A good job of the creators of the show taking advantage of the medium of television. If I had one complaint personally, I think the show could have been a little bit longer. There's only 9 episodes. Each one, except for the first one, is under an hour. So I don't remember how long the main story of the game is, but I'm assuming it's at least 20 hours or so. And so it is really interesting me that from that game they only managed to get just under 9 hours of a show. Not to say that it's bad. I really enjoyed it. I think, it was paced well. They got the focuses just right. But I think maybe you could have eked out maybe 1 or 2 more episodes. Like in the show, there's a couple month long time jump where, I don't remember at that point in the game if there's anything in that 3-month span, which they maybe could have pulled from. But even if there wasn't, the creators of the show showed several times that they didn't really need anything to go off of, that they were more than capable of coming up with new ideas that fit within this world that worked and worked to expand it. So if anything, for selfish reasons, I'm sad that the show is over. I could have kept watching for a couple more weeks. So maybe they could have done with a couple more episodes, but I'm still not upset with what they chose to do. Yeah, at the end of the day, The Last of Us is a fantastic show. You'll hear a lot of people, or you may have heard a lot of people say it's the greatest video game adaptation of all time. That may be, there's a lot that I haven't seen. I'm sure there will be a lot of great ones to come. But you don't have to have played the game to enjoy the show. There's a lot of people who won't have played the game that are going to really love the show. There are a lot of people who have played the game that will also love the show. It's a really a great show. Really, I don't have any complaints. I'm interested to see how they proceed with season 2. Again, I've never played The Last of Us Part 2, but I do know a couple of things that happen. So I'm interested to see how they progress with the story from that point in the television form. All right, so The Last of Us Season 1, have you seen it? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for more.